All right, Chapter 18, Church Apps. Do you know what apps on your phone actually do? I'm not talking about getting you a ride or throwing a bird at a poorly constructed architecture with green pigs. I'm talking about the hard facts of what the apps on your phone actually do. They save time and they save space. No one has room for a dedicated GPS unit, a calculator, a PC for email, a calendar book, and dictionary for spell checking your handwritten notes. The sheer amount of things that the mobile phone replaces by combining them all into the most utilitarian item in history is mind-boggling. You would need a fully stocked RV to keep up with your moderately active phone user if you separated all its uses. The way a phone culminates and collects the tasks and devices that it used to take up space in their space-time finding and operation is unique. The church app cannot be an app for the app's sake. You want it to be anything but a waste of a tithe. If you want it to be anything but a waste of a tithe. It needs to be an app for God's sake, or you are not better than the servant given the one talent, Matthew 25:14-30. Placing it where everyone else is placing it, in the safe hole in the ground, which is tempting the servant not to grow, that tempted the servant not to grow what the master had given him. So what do you want from your app? Is it just a fancy phone-based version of your website? It might not be necessary. What people view online material for their phones, needlessly duplicated on the website service? Nobody. Mobile internet is a gift from God, which can be squandered or abused as we see the porn industry and mobile games do. Or it can be used for real kingdom work, but that means it has to be made by people who make them actually work. Here are a few ideas, again not exhaustive, but worth looking at if your church has an app or if it's considering it. We speak English in most churches in North America, but even if we don't, there are three main languages that the biblical texts were originally written. None of them are commonly spoken anywhere in the West. Greek isn't something that just gets picked up when you accept Jesus into your heart in camp at July. It's a foreign language with a complex history and usage. Its understanding means an understanding of verb usage in the male and female, even neutered forms of words that we take for granted in our bastardized English of 2019. So when your pastor whips out the Greek references, many new or simply non-believing Bible school attending Christians feel like they have to agree or look for the fool questioning it, unless you so happen to be a Bible school attending Christian with a theology degree. Then, every so often, a pastor tries his hand at Greek and butchers a word to suit a topically driven sermon. It makes you mad, but the church gets the sermon either way, and you're stuck with them wishing a pastor did a better job for word study. Wishing the congregation wasn't spoon-fed, wishing that you almost hadn't taken the Greek in the first place, because ignorance really is bliss sometimes. But there is a way out here. A church app that properly references Greek the pastor wants to use in his sermon. The Bereans did this. Now these Jews were more noble than those in Thessalonica. They received the word with all eagerness, examining the scriptures daily to see if these things were so. Acts 17-11. We read that they didn't just sit quietly waiting for the sermon to end so that they could go to the potluck. They searched the scriptures so that they could know what was being said was true. Imagine a church that takes the Bible seriously enough. Imagine a church that takes its Bible seriously. Enter the internet, a place where all information is democratized, and you can Google search what your pastor can. If the church could build an app to do this kind of fact-checking so that when your pastor or any pastor uses a biblical language reference, it's sent to members to check to see during service the app-driven online sermon notes, but instead 3 vague questions on the back of the bulletin you're most certainly going to throw out. It's something that builds your faith stronger and allows for transparent and thorough teaching that the church desperately needs in this age of information. Another great example would be the simplest of prayer blogs, a live, updated list of everything that needs prayer that church members could check during the lulls of the day and spend time in prayer for the church locally and globally. The main thing to consider when looking at what the church app is necessary is whether or not it wastes resources that can be dealt with through free channels. Video hosting can be done through free YouTube. Pastors' blogs can be done through Blogger or half a dozen other platforms. The value in an app is that it saves time and money and space. If it's not doing this, it needs to be duly considered. There is also a real overlooking of usefulness of church apps. When we consider our Bibles, what comes to mind? Thick leather-bound books that we tuck under our arms with a half-dozen bulletins from the week past. Maybe a zippered case with a carrying handle and some bedazzling on the fringe. But what is a Bible? Not the Bible, a Bible. It's a book. It's a possession that we all have, given the users the translated words that God spoke to through his people in a way that can read and relate to. A far cry short from the fickle games on our phone that go in and out of style when seasons and applications are replaced by newer, more adequately funded similar versions. But something weird is going on in almost every church in North America that runs a lost and found books. There are Bibles in them. I first realized this in my morning quiet time when I should have been reading my Bible. Instead, I was on Twitter and at Wrestling Pastor, a hilarious account if you ever should follow, tweeted this along with a very stunned and confused Vince McMahon. The moment you realize that there are always a bunch of Bibles in the lost and found, but never any cell phones. The why of that collection of dusty lost scriptures speaks volumes to both our need for them and our integration with the smartphone as a society. It would be easy to write this practice off as the real reason that you should read from a real Bible, but it might be the other way around. The reason you don't see a host of phones in the lost and found is that the users of those phones are engaging with that device daily, if not hourly, because it saves them time and space. We have to remember that this is about developing apps that when thinking about scriptures that when thinking about the scriptures themselves, almost no one in your church is reading the closest version to the original scriptures available to them. We're all reading English versions of Greek and Hebrew texts. As we continue down this wonderful world of mobile devices, the church will have to take seriously the realities of the situation, just like it did during the Reformation. Luther and Gutenberg tested the same questionable waters with the toes of the printing press when they were trying to get Bibles to the masses. Maybe, just maybe, apps will be our printing press. We only have time and space to tell. So I agree with most of that chapter still. Still flirting with that internet as a place type thing. But I forgot about that tweet from the Wrestling Pastor because it really did open my mind. I love having like a physical Bible and interacting with the Word that way, especially now that I've kind of made the distinction of searching the Scriptures versus reading the Scriptures, and how I think that plays into how we, preach from it, how we teach from it, how we learn from it. I think that's still an important distinction, something that needs to be made. But he nails it on the head that you never see smartphones in the lost and found, but you'll see people's Bibles. And it used to be that Bibles were some of the most expensive things that you would ever own because it was such an investment to have like a printed book like that. And technology progresses, and here we are, where those formerly expensive things are now almost garbage worthy because they could be left in lost and found for months at a time. So, is your church app building your church? Is it building up the body of saints? And is it doing the things to help build up the body of saints? Or is it just your version of YouTube so that with a concerted audience? Is it just your version of Twitter or a blog with a conserved audience that is going to read those posts? If it's not building up the church, why are you doing it? Very easy question. Didn't change much. Hope you guys liked it. On to the next chapter.